Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
In the age of internet radio, there are scenarios that pop up that wouldn't have popped up in, say, a normal broadcast environment. My girlfriend has this dog. She got her a long time ago. And it's a little toy Yorkie, a little miniature Yorkshire. 3 pounds. Now, I'm not a small dog person, right? I came from Great Danes and German Shepherds, and I like a dog you can get your meat hooks on. A dog that, big dog. A dog, Yorkie's not a dog. Yorkie's like a hamster. It's like a rat. In fact, I say it's a rat. And so at first, this little rat dog and I started off kind of tenuously years ago. And it's made even worse by the fact the dog came pre-named. I guess at the breeders or whatever, they named the dog Tootsie. Now, I'm thinking, Tootsie? Are you kidding me? And over the course of time, this stupid rat dog has just stolen my heart. I cannot help myself. And she has been really sick over the past about 10 days. And so everybody's gone right now. I'm here in my studio, and there's no one here but me and this dog, and this little Yorkie. And I couldn't bear to put her in the cage. She's pathetic. She's sitting there just, trying to breathe and sneezing and stuff. And I just couldn't. I couldn't put her in the little kennel in the room. I couldn't do it. So I've got this dog on my lap, got a little blanket, and she's hanging with me. She's totally crashed out. And the problem with this is that she has no concept that she's a small dog, 3 pounds, smaller than one of my shoes. She has no idea. So when she hears any freaking sound out there, anything, could be the closing of a door, could be a neighbor dog, a car going by, could be something she hears on the television, the ice maker in the refrigerator goes off, I don't know. She just goes crazy. And there's no warning. She puffs her chest out and acts like a dog that's 200 pounds. So my fear is over the next 90 minutes, while we're talking about whatever, this little rat dog is just going to just, number one, scare the crap out of me, and 2, totally interrupt my train of thought. So just bear with me. I've got her here. She's kind of medicated, and, she's just one of, I've always been that way. I've always grown up with animals. I'm a total pushover. It's funny, I feel like I'm a communicator. I can communicate responsibly and effectively like an adult. And I walk into a room with a dog and I turn into a babbling idiot. And I'm like, look at you, boogie, and everybody's looking at me like, oh my God, it's embarrassing. How's my little puppy whoopee? Does anybody else do that? I can't help myself. And I'm rolling around on the ground. We're playing with the whoopee and the rope. And do you want a treat? Oh crap! I said the word. No, dog. No, I didn't say that word. Bad word. Anyway, I'm doing the show with a freaking Tootsie dog on my lap, and she's my co-host for the day. We're talking about frequently asked questions. I hear a lot of things over and over and over and over again. As admin of the thinkingatheist.com website and as producer of the videos and admin of the Facebook page. And so what I wanted to do is take some time and address some of the stuff that I hear all the time. And I want to take your calls as well. In fact, our first call is going to be from a young lady named Erin, who actually sent me an email a couple of weeks back and asked me a question I hear all the time. After 30 years, how did you become an atheist? And Erin believes in God, so she's asking me from a position of faith. And I thought, well, instead of me just babbling about it, I'm going to have Erin join me on the air. We're just going to have a conversation about it, and we'll do that here in a couple of minutes. But I hear a lot of stuff like, When do your podcasts air? Because I can never freaking find them. And I'm sorry about that, by the way. I don't have a weekly show. I do usually bi-weekly on Sundays at noon Central USA time. I'm thinking about going to a weekly show in 2012. The question is do I have enough material to warrant it? And do I want to do a weekly show? Do people want to hear a weekly show? Should we air it at noon? Is there another time? If I air it at a certain time for this group, another group says, no, that's horrible. I have to work, or I've got to do this, or it's the middle of the night in my part of the country. But if you want to know when the podcast air, the best way to do it is to go to thethinkingatheist.com, and you'll click the podcast button there, and you'll see a list of the shows. And then you'll also see a link to our Blog Talk Radio page, and that should have anything upcoming listed. So it's there. It's just at this measure, it's kind of random. If I'm traveling for work, I won't be in town, I can't do the show. I wonder how Dillahunty and his team does it. Do they just take it 1 week at a time? Because I think they go every single week. Do you want a weekly show? Should we bother? And here's another question about the podcast that I need some help with. I kind of like having a themed show. If you go back through our podcast library over the past year and however many months, you can see what we're going to talk about in the title of the podcast, whether it's grieving without God or dealing with religious families or childhood indoctrination or talking about cults or whatever, and you can see the theme going in. I really kind of like that, but I don't know if I can sustain titled shows for several years. You're going to repeat yourself. We've already done 2 shows now on cults. I've had other requests to do another show on grief. And so should we name them, or should we do what Dillahunty and company do and just do numbers? Thinking Atheist podcast number 50. Sounds kind of sterile to me. Should we do just more random stuff? We have no theme and we just talk to each other. We just open the phones and see what sticks. I've had several requests from people to do that. Anyway, if you have an opinion on the subject, you can sound off on the Facebook page, or you can email me directly, editor@thethinkingatheist.com. Mina sent me a message and said, is it weird having a religious family with the holidays around the corner? Well, for those who don't know my story, my family is devoutly religious. I am the only atheist. All of them are devoutly religious. In fact, my parents are trained theologians. You can imagine how stressful that is. And it does cause a measure of stress when we do Thanksgiving. I mean, it's really under the surface. It's nothing that's said out loud. Anybody with a religious family know what I'm talking about? You go into the room, and the temperature of the room changes a little bit. And I don't think I'm just being paranoid. I mean, I feel it. The way you're treated, the way people talk to you, it's not quite pity. I can't really tell how to describe it. But you are the elephant in the room. You are the one person who doesn't believe what everybody else believes. And it really gets weird when everybody gathers around the table with turkey and dressing and potatoes and fudge and pumpkin pie and all of that stuff, and pray for the meal. Dear Jesus, we thank you for our many blessings. Please be with us as we go about our daily lives. Let us give you all of the glory and honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now, when they're praying that prayer, tell me they're not thinking about the guy in the room who thinks it's all a bunch of crap. I know they are. I think they're, in some measure, I think they're embarrassed. In some way, somebody failed, I think is how they receive it. And it makes the holidays hard. Christmas, I mean, I love my family, and we have a good relationship, but I will say it's certainly borne the strain over the past several years. Nobody can relax until I'm saved from hell, and it's a problem. Sometimes it makes me just not want to pick up the phone or answer it. Sometimes I just think, screw it. And people on our pages will often say that, screw them. If they don't love you for who you are, just slough them off. And I just don't go there. I don't want to slough them off. I don't want to disconnect. I still love my mother and father and siblings, and I still want to have a good relationship, and I believe they still want to have a good relationship with me. I want to try to figure it out. But anybody who's dealt with religious families knows the challenges that people face over the coming weeks as we get into Thanksgiving and Christmas. Andre sent a message and said, "Why do you take up for the religious? You're always saying that they're not stupid." Well, actually, I don't always say that, Andre. but I do. You'll find that coming from 30 years inside the faith, sometimes I will correct the record if somebody says something like, "Oh, all the religious are idiots," or "They're all insane," or "They're all this or that," some inflammatory verbal grenade that they throw out, They just dismiss them all. All the religious, they're a waste. They're a waste of time. There's something wrong with them. They're mentally ill. I hear that a lot. Sorry, that's not really the case, at least in my circle. You may have had a different experience. Because of where I live, the people in my life are mostly religious. They go to church. They pray before meals. They pray for people in the hospital. They invoke God. And I'll tell you, they're fantastic people. I would trust them with, my ATM number. I would trust them with the keys to my home. They're good people. They're not governed by hate. They don't get up in the morning and say, "I hate this and I hate that." In fact, the people I know who even are against certain groups, we usually talk about gay rights, and homosexuals. All the Christians hate the gays. Sorry. There are some who do, out there. But in my circle, it's not hate. It's really more about fear. They don't understand it. They've been taught to shun it, to be afraid of it. They don't wake up in the morning and say, "I hate gay people." They avoid, certainly. They stand back. They often make inflammatory accusations about what the gay community does. But most of the people I know they're not motivated by hate. It's fear. Think of what they're thinking under the surface. Right? Devoutly religious people raising their children on a biblical foundation, the Bible, in which God destroyed entire cities for homosexual behavior. Their worst nightmare would be that someone in their family, one of their children, be homosexual. I think they're afraid. I think they're afraid of what they simply don't understand and haven't taken the time to learn about. I was guilty. I didn't hate gays. My best friend of, it's almost 25 years now, more than 25 years, came out as gay in the late 90s. I was still a believer then. I didn't know what to do with it. I was scared. I was confused. I was kind of angry. I didn't hate him. I think we do a poor job of understanding our adversaries in the arena of ideas when we say things like that. And you'll find religious people who do hate. I mean, right now there's somebody who's about to show an example. They're going to post it on Facebook. They're going to stick it on the chat room of somebody who hated. Fine, they exist. I'm saying that not everybody is like that. In fact, the majority of the people in my circle, which is hugely religious right here in the Midwest of America, it's just not the case. We do a poor job sometimes of understanding what we're up against. Another fallacy, I'm totally digressing here, but another fallacy I think people get into is they say that Christians oppose abortion because they hate women. They want to take away women's rights. They hate women. They want them in the kitchen. They want them barefoot and pregnant and with no authority, submitted completely to the male domination in their lives. They hate women. Sorry, that's not accurate, at least not here. Does it exist? Yes. Will you find specific examples of it? Yes. But they're not motivated because they hate women. Largely, they believe life begins at conception, right? This is what their faith taught them. It's a human life to them, and they're working to preserve life. They don't want to be responsible for the death of a viable human being, period. Now, do they do crazy things? Have they gotten educated about what it is, what human life is, even at the cellular level? Do they understand things like stem cells? No. No, they decided life begins at conception. That's a baby. It's evil. We have to protect life. But I don't know anybody around here who says they want to minimize women. we have to do a better job of understanding who's out there and what we're dealing with. We understand their mindset. We know better how to approach the culture, don't we? One more real quick before I go to Aaron on the phone. Why do I sometimes see religious ads on your website? Great question, and I hear it a lot. Somebody's on my YouTube page or on the thinkingatheist.com, and they'll be saying, I don't know what's come up. I think we blocked a few of them. Scientology we blocked. Somebody saw that and sent it to me, and I'm like, you got to be shitting me. Scientology blocked. There's a few others that we blocked, but by and large, I think what happens is that Google AdWords sees keywords like religion, right? And God, not knowing whether it's pro-God, pro-religion, anti-God, anti-religion, whatever. And it just selects. And I honestly I just haven't quelled it. I haven't, it is what it is kind of deal. Google kind of creeps me out because after my speech at the Free OK convention in July, I did a segment about ChristianMingle.com, the Christian dating website. Now, that keyword was nowhere in the video, in the tags, nowhere on the website that I know of. Nowhere. I spoke it, and I spent a few minutes talking about it. It was a joke, right? We were talking about God's master plan for you to find your soulmate on planet Earth is to have you sign up for a fee at ChristianMingle.com and then sample. And it's just ridiculous, right? And all of a sudden, Christian Mingle ads started popping up all over that particular video. So did Google recognize my speech? Am I totally paranoid? The keywords weren't anywhere, and people were emailing me from everywhere saying Christian Mingle ads are running during that video right when you talk about it. Is Google that smart? Is that voice recognition, or am I paranoid? I don't know. Anyway, we'll get to some more of your frequently asked questions here in just a few. Let's talk to Aaron. Aaron was kind enough to send me an email a couple of weeks ago. Now, Aaron, you were a little dubious about joining me on the air because you are a believer in God. And obviously, you didn't want an ambush, right? You didn't want me to be what is metaphorically referred to as a bag of douche. To set you up to look stupid. Is that right? Because, I mean, some people are afraid to come on this show for that reason. And I always try to tell them, ask anybody. I'm a pretty nice guy. So, I mean, do you feel comfortable? You feel like you're walking into the lion's den, or are you good?
I'm nervous, but I think it has more to do with the fact that I've never been, aired before.
Well, you sound great.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad for this opportunity because you made a good point that in order to really, I need to understand where atheists come from, and I don't know that many atheists. I mean, I have a family member who doesn't refer to himself as an atheist, but he doesn't think God exists, and we have great conversations. And I think, and I'm just trying to gain an understanding to know where the group that calls themselves atheists are coming from, because I'd like to understand more about that.
Well, I don't know if I can speak for everybody. I mean, was it Richard Dawkins who said once, like, gathering atheists is sort of like herding cats? So you're going to find a widely diverse culture of people under the I don't believe in God category, but I'll do my best. So okay. The first section here belongs to you. Hit me. What do you want to know?
Well, my first question I thought I'd open with is just, you were a Christian for 30 years. What happened? Why did you go to atheism? What led you to make that decision?
I've got to make a long story short somehow. Do you know anything about my story at all?
I know that you were a Christian broadcaster for 10 years. That I'm guessing. If I had to guess, I'd say that there was a trauma of some sort that occurred in your life, and it was not explainable. Something negative happened, and it just seemed that would be my guess, is that there was a trauma.
Let me give you the Reader's Digest version, and for those who've heard this before, my apologies, bear with me, but I have to set it up, okay? I was born to a devoutly religious home. I'll tell you how Christian my family is. My parents honeymooned in the Holy Land in Jerusalem, okay?
Wow.
That is how hardcore they are.
Wow.
My mother wrote a college-level Greek New Testament study guide that is, I believe, still used at university today. Okay?
Wow.
We were raised in a devoutly religious culture. I said the salvation prayer at the age of 9. We were raised in church, prayer at the meals. I was in Christian school by 4th grade. I was a spokesperson for Youth for Christ by 9th grade. Obviously, I was able to communicate. It was one of the gifts that I had, and so Christians love that. I was on stage, early, and I was out representing Jesus. I was a Christian broadcaster starting in 1990 through, I think, late 2001, early 2002. And for me, Aaron, it wasn't one thing. I mean, there were two major events that really started to get me thinking. The first event was the death of Christian artist Rich Mullins that happened in the 90s, a horrible death. And I was on the air saying the words of comfort.
I think.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was horrible. We had just hosted Rich in a concert a few months before. And the whole time people are thanking God for his goodness and, Rich is in heaven now. God called him home, and even as I'm typing this stuff into the website, welcome home, Rich. I'm thinking to myself, something for me does not jive. This is God's divine plan. Are you kidding? And the second, of course, being 9/11, when I saw what was essentially a human act, a human response. I didn't see any divine anything anywhere. So I sort of stewed on that, and denial is a great motivator. I mean, a great coping mechanism. What happens is if things get complicated in the faith, what you do is you just stop going to church. You just stop having the conversation. If someone asks you, do you believe in God? You go, oh, yeah, of course I believe in God. And that's it. You just pinball off of it, and you don't go there. And you put those doubts at bay, because doubt is the enemy, right? Doubt is Satan nipping away at you. You can't, obviously, of course there's a God. Are you kidding? Of course there's a God. There has to be a God. And finally, I don't know if it's a middle age thing, but has anybody else who's approached the age of 40 noticed that you personally put up with less bullshit? I put up with less just dumb stuff. I don't mean just about religion, just dumb stuff. I find myself going, that's stupid. And I speak my mind even more. And I found myself in my mid-30s thinking, why wouldn't God want me to ask the question? Why wouldn't God want to make sense? Why would a creative being so desperate for answers and then play Where's Waldo with heaven and hell in the balance? His word, contradicts itself, doesn't it? What does his word say? Have I really read the Bible? When I finally came to a point of critical mass, and I read the scriptures, I read the Bible front to back. For the first time objectively, by the way. I'd read the Bible many times before, but I read it for the first time objectively. And I just it was like reading a new book. It was like reading a fresh book I hadn't seen before. It's amazing what perspective and a measure of objectivity do. And then I started reading authors I'd never heard of before. Richard Dawkins. I started actually with an ex-pastor. He was sort of the companion to Billy Graham. He was in Canada. His name was Charles Templeton. And he was actually Billy Graham's roommate in college. And he was like the Canadian Billy Graham. And he came to the point in his life when he was evangelizing all around, and he was like, he couldn't take it. He said, this makes no sense. I can't do this. And he rejected all of it publicly, and he wrote a book called Farewell to God. And I read that book, and it was like, I found myself nodding physically. I was like, yes, that's exactly the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. And that pinballed me into Richard Dawkins, The God Delusion. I read a book by another ex-evangelist named Dan Barker called Godless. I highly recommend it. And I began to realize that I was one of a great many people who were having this internal conflict. And they told us as I was growing up that it had to be the devil, brush it away. But I, for the first time, embraced that conflict and said, no, I'm going to find out not that God is the beginning of the argument, but I'm going to add up all the math and see if God shows up at the end, to see if it all sort of comes together to justify the existence of God. And after my journey, it took 2 years, I came to the conclusion that I just couldn't do it anymore. And I came out publicly as an atheist a few years back. And I'll tell you, the fallout has been pretty significant. Personally, a little bit professionally. I'm in Oklahoma, and you say the word atheist out here, and they'll drag you behind a pickup truck. But my thinking is this, Aaron, is that it would be easy to say nothing, but if nobody says anything ever, then no one ever says anything. Nothing ever changes. No one ever asks the question out loud. If we stay afraid, if nobody challenges established thinking, then nothing is ever tested to see if it is or isn't true. And so, my long story short wasn't all that short, but that's the cliff notes of how I got to where I am today. And it was starting the website for me was just an opportunity to try to reach out to people. I felt alone. I felt kind of angry, but I felt like I'd not been lied to, but that I had been taught something that was not true. And so I publicly now challenge the faith of my youth in video form and radio podcast, on blogs, wherever I can publicly, because I believe, honestly, Aaron, there are others out there like me who are having a hard time making it all fit. The square peg is not going into the round hole, and they want to know somebody else thinks there's a problem. Houston, we have a problem. Yes. And I'm the one who hopefully will help spur them to maybe take a stand in their own circle. Does that answer your question, Aaron?
It does. It sounds like, so did you ever feel like you had a choice growing up about, did your parents, were you kind of sheltered and you were only exposed to the Christian religion? Did you ever feel like you had a choice for free thought, or did your parents kind of dominate the way you thought?
Well, I was very much a product of my culture. I mean, when you go to Christian school and you have a Bible class and it is taught as truth, I mean, you learned the Bible just like you learned history and math and science and everything else. It was taught as a fact. The other religions we would learn about, in fact, they would often teach classes. We did one class called World Religions, where you would learn about the others, but it was always taught from the perspective that it's good to know what the adversary believes. It's good to know what's out there in the world. These people are deceived. We need to go and one day enlighten them with the truth.
I was just going to say, I believe I respect everybody's right to a choice. Everybody has a choice to believe however they want. And as a Christian, I try not to judge. I have my belief systems, but I respect your ability to choose your beliefs. I mean, everybody has that right. We're going to disagree, and I know that there's no way I'm going to be able to, I'm not God, and I can't give any, and I can explain all day my perspective on why I believe what I believe, but it's going to be meaningless because it's a personal thing. And I'm kind of rambling here, but
no, you're fine, Aaron. Let me ask you a quick question. Were your parents Christians?
Yes, they proclaim to be Christians, and I was raised in a Christian home. I went to a Baptist church as a child, and but I don't think I ever really got it. I believed personally that Christianity was a bunch of rules, and it was more of a pride thing for me. I thought, if I do the right thing, if I live this stereotypical Christian ideal that's in our culture, then I'm a good person, I'm a Christian, I'm saved, and that's going to get me to heaven. But now I disagree with that. I don't think that that's what Christianity is about. It's not about living under a bunch of rules and behaving a certain way and getting saved, because there's nothing people can do in order to be saved, in my opinion. I mean, or the Bible states that people are inherently bad, and there is nothing we can do. People, our actions, our behaviors, whatever we do, being quote good is not going to get us into heaven.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe that the Bible is God's word, Aaron?
Do.
Okay. Well, I did too, and we were always taught that the Bible is divinely inspired, inerrant, and perfect. It is God's method for communicating his message, not just to us, but to the world. We were supposed to carry that message. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospels to all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. Does that ring a bell with you, Aaron?
Well, yeah. I mean, you're taught that, but I think you should really understand it, and I may be crucifying myself here, but I think a lot of Christian people don't really understand what it's about, and I think that they use it for selfish means, and I can't believe I just said that out loud, but... No.
Honestly, when I was a Christian, I believed that was true. I mean, Jesus is convenient sometimes, and Jesus is very profitable sometimes.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who love doing their will in God's name, usually for a buck. I totally agree with you, Aaron.
Yeah, and that's true. And I think a lot of people, who call themselves Christian, maybe because they live in the United States, they think they're Christian because their parents are Christian, because they attend a church, they think they're Christian. But I think that term gets abused, and if people, and I agree with you that you need to think. I mean, you need to sit there and think and really understand where you're coming from. And, I mean, the thinking atheist, I think that's great that you are looking for, I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but I assume that you're
Actually, that's a great question because it's on my list. I was like, I need to mention that. Some people are like, here's what I hear, Aaron. I hear two things. First of all isn't the thinking atheist redundant? And I always say, absolutely not. Just because somebody rejects the idea of God doesn't mean that they have turned on their brain or that they're rational people or that they're mature, respectful people who deserve to be listened to. It just means they rejected God. It doesn't mean they've thought out anything else. Trust me, anybody who's seen the comments pages of the YouTube channel can attest to that. There are people who reject God who are just, wow, ground control to Major Tom. Whoa, they're just whoa. And other people say, isn't it an oxymoron? And, of course, that's usually what the believers say. Well, any thinker wouldn't be an atheist. The reason I chose it was this. The thinking atheist is not a person. People will often use the initials to address me, but the thinking atheist is not me. It is a community of people who are encouraged to add it up. As Aaron Ra would say, check the figures. Check it out. Do the homework. Do some digging. Think it through. And my encouragement to everybody else is to do what sort of set me free, which was to stop assuming, stop inheriting, stop being an echo of my family and culture's worldview, and go freaking do the homework and see what you find yourself, and then have a worldview of your own. And that's where the thinking atheist comes from. Aaron, don't you think that if you and I had been born in, like, Mexico, we'd be Catholic? If we were born in, Saudi Arabia, we'd be Muslim? I mean, don't you kind of feel like we would be a different religion if we were geographically in a different place?
It's hard to say. I mean, I'm saying that the odds are good, but that's a question that can't be answered because it hasn't happened. The odds are good. Yeah, if I was raised in a society, but for me personally, I don't base my beliefs on the culture. I don't look and say, well, I'm an American, so I'm a Christian. I believe what I believe because it's interesting because a lot of people who call themselves atheists say that their logic led them to be an atheist, but what do you think about that verse in the Bible that says we're given everything we need on this earth and in this life to know that God exists? Because I believe there's a verse in the Bible that says we're given everything we need to know that He exists.
Yeah, the Bible essentially asserts that in creation and in conscience, even those who don't hear the message of Jesus will be able to look around the world and know that He exists. I actually had this conversation with a pastor a few weeks ago on a radio show. And
how
he was
do you
saying,
feel about that?
Well, this same pastor I spoke to believes what most mainstream Christians believe, founded on the gospel, that you must confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. And so how do you get from someone in a remote deserted island wakes up one day, he's never reached by a missionary, he never sees a Bible, he never knows the Christ story, and he wakes up and sees a beautiful sunrise and complexity in the universe, and he looks up at the stars. How does he get from that to, there was a guy named Jesus who was on earth 2,000 years ago who lived 33 years before he was sacrificed and rose again on the third day and then ascended and will one day come again to rapture his believers to heaven, and we will all live together and be happily ever after. I mean, how does he figure that out from, wow, what a beautiful, complex world I live in? And that's a huge hole for me.
It's interesting. Well, how come there have been religious beliefs since, the Stone Age? I mean, have you ever heard of trephination, which is what that people used to do back in the Stone Age? Because mental illness has been around as long as there have been people. And when people would act what they deemed crazy or something that wasn't in the norm for that group of people, they would do trephination, and they would take a rock and actually remove a piece of their skull to release these demons and spirits out of the body of that person. Why has this whole religious issue been around since the beginning of time? I mean, there's got to be something to the fact that people are hardwired. I think they've done studies where people's brains are hardwired to believe in God, but why is that?
I think religion has an evolutionary explanation. Let's look through the looking glass the other way. And I'm well over my 15 minutes with you, but I'm having a great time, so I'm good for time if you are, Aaron. You good to keep going for a second?
I'm good to keep going.
Think about this. Christopher Hitchens once said that these religious and superstitious explanations for things were our first and worst explanations. I mean, think about primitive humankind. Obviously, if they see, the aurora borealis or something, they're going to look up and see something supernatural. The gods are speaking to us, or, if the volcano erupts and the village is destroyed, they must have angered the gods. I mean, they were kind of making this stuff up as they went along. They didn't have the knowledge that we have of science, of our own genome, of psychology, of the powers of suggestion, of culture. They just didn't understand nearly as much, and so their explanations were religious in nature. And religions will, I think, always exist. I've had people say that, in the age of information, you think religion's going to die? And I'm like, never. Religion will always be. Beliefs of every kind will always exist. But the more we learn, think about the things that they thought were, like those who used to have epilepsy. They used to say they were demon-possessed. Right? Even the physicians of the day would say, it's a demon, right? And they would stone him to death or execute him or do something horrible. Well, now we understand, no, there's an actual physiological reason for this to happen, and there is a treatment, something we can do scientifically to help treat it. And I think the more we learn, the more educated we become, the more religion begins to sort of go by the wayside. We don't need the primitive explanations anymore. Now we're understanding what really happens. Do we have a lot to learn? Yes. But I take a lot more satisfaction in the scientific answer, Aaron.
Well, that's fine. And, I can respect that. But this is kind of off the topic, but this is another question I've been wondering about. Atheists think, I'm guessing, well, I don't want to assume, but is it true that you believe when you die that that's the end, that nothing happens?
What I always tell people is like, it's before you were born. People even have said, I've met some atheists who are a little scared of death, right? They don't want to die. And I always say, were you afraid in the year 1880? And they go, no. And I go, great, because that's what it's going to be like. You're not going to be here.
Well,
all right, I'm sorry. Continue.
Motivation? No, that's fine. But it just makes me wonder, why do anything on earth? Why try to be good? Why try to figure things out? Because if your life, because that makes your life meaningless.
No, I totally disagree. I look at it totally differently, Aaron, because there is no afterlife, because there is no eternity with mansions and streets of gold and pearly gates and angel wings and all of that stuff, because this is the only shot we have. Every moment should be maximized.
But to do what? To accomplish what?
To make our lives good, to make our lives better for other people. I'm an atheist, and I have a family. I love them dearly. I have interest in pursuits. I love science. I love learning from people. I love encouraging other people. We as a human condition, we don't give up on being human. We don't give up our humanity just because we don't believe in a happy heaven in the sky. I think because there is no heaven, every moment here should be cherished and maximized, absolutely.
And it should be cherished I can't remember your exact word, but I agree with that. But but what's the point? If you think about it, why?
Well, do you have to have an afterlife to enjoy this life?
Well, it gives me something to work towards. It gives me a motivation. It gives me a reason to to be here, to exist. I mean, if there's no afterlife, I mean, everything you're doing now is just going to be gone. So why do that?
Well, if people had thought that way back, if people had thought that way, we'd still be, our tools would still be made of stone, and we'd be, I mean, humankind has grown and evolved and advanced and done so much in just in evolutionary terms, in just such a short amount of time. And
right.
I honestly think that we should count ourselves extremely fortunate to have, we won the lottery. I mean, the odds of us being alive are extremely small, minuscule. And yet here
right.
we are. Here we are on this rock, in this solar system, in this galaxy, among hundreds of millions of galaxies in a vast, 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 vast universe. And the fact that we have this shot, rather than look around and say, oh, God, there's no heaven, this sucks. Why am I even here? We look around, the atheist looks around, most of us, and say, I just am filled with awe at the fact that I am here and I'm alive, and I will maximize every second I have, because I know that there is no happy heaven in the sky. There are no virgins, 72 virgins if you're Muslim. There's no nirvana. There's no one. This is it, and I'm going to make the most of it. So at the end, I'm going to say, hey, that was a hell of a ride. I made the world a better place. And that's it.
But then you're gone, and it's as though that you don't get to enjoy that life that you lived on Earth during this time. I mean, there's nothing.
Why not? Why not? Why wouldn't I enjoy my life here?
Well, no. What I'm saying is once you die, I mean, you can live every moment of your life here, but once you die, if there's nothing, then I don't understand why.
Do you think, Aaron,
why you would try?
Do I have to believe in heaven to have the ability to love another human being, to cherish them, to want the best for them, to build a life with them? Do I have to have a belief in an afterlife to love a child, or to want to educate myself, or to join up with Charity Water and build a well in a third world country to benefit the hungry, or to have a career, or to get an education? Why would I need an afterlife to try to maximize my life here?
And I'm not saying that you can't, love a child or get an education. I guess I'm not explaining myself well. I just don't
think
understand.
You and I we're operating from different perspectives. I mean, you think there's a payoff, right? You're thinking, why build the house if at the end, if no one's ever going to turn the lights on?
It's not a payoff. It's just, I'm not like, oh man, I'm gonna be good and do all this great stuff and then try to get into heaven. It's not like a payoff. It's just, coming from my perspective, there are two places you go, and I don't want to go to wherever hell is, wherever that is, but I want to go to heaven, and I want to make a difference in the world too. But if everybody just goes into nothingness, the world will be impacted, but then you just go into nothingness, and so, and eventually we're going to use up all the resources, and we're going to use up, and the world is not going to be inhabitable anymore.
This world will outlast us. Trust me.
Well,
this world is going to outlast us. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be operating responsibly on planet Earth, but the hubris of saying that we're going to destroy the planet that we live on, I personally, and I know there are those who will disagree with me, but I personally think that's just hubris. I don't buy that at all. Can we damage it? You bet. But the world will outlast humankind. I have no doubt. I think that a lot of people. Are you afraid of death? Does death scare you? Yeah.
Let me think about this for a second. It's the unknown. The process of dying and the unknown. Anything that's unknown is going to wreak a little bit of anxiety. But no, I know where I'm going, and I'm not afraid of what's coming, but the death process and the unknown is a little nerve-wracking, if you can distinguish between that. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but...
No, death can be scary for a lot of people. I think, a lot of people, it is the unknown or the process, what will it be like before you draw your last breath. Do you think that heaven for you is a way to alleviate the fear of what comes after? I mean, what if it was nothing? If there was a hidden happy place with streets of gold and harps and pearls and angel wings, and you're sitting at the right hand of Jesus Christ, and there's singing and laughing and joy and green grass and your family pet's up there waiting for you, wagging his tail, and all these happy things are waiting. Does that not help to alleviate the fear of what it will one day be like to end? You've got a place to go. It's not over. That's a tremendous coping mechanism for some.
Well, it's not a coping mechanism for me. I mean, no, I'm not. It's not to alleviate my fear, because I'm not able to. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm pretty nervous, but
no, that's fine. I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, you don't believe in heaven because you're afraid, but it's part of your belief system.
It's part of my belief system, but I'm afraid of what death entails, but I don't want to go to hell, of course. I mean, that's a terrifying place.
Let me throw something out very quickly, Aaron, and
okay,
I want to give some time to our other callers here. We've got about 45 minutes left, but let me throw this out, and you tell me if you've gotten some satisfaction here. I mean, you and I were never really probably going to agree, but I think we've had a pretty good talk, don't you?
There's a lot more I could say, but I mean, it's been all right. I don't feel I've expressed myself well. I feel frustrated with myself, but
no. Let me throw this out, and this is an example that I use often. I used it a few weeks ago. I'll use it again here when I speak at the event in Oklahoma City. Ayan Hirsi Ali is a woman who escaped oppression from her Muslim faith. She escaped an arranged marriage. She became a member of the Dutch Parliament, and she's become an advocate for women's rights, speaking out against genital mutilation and honor killings and all these horrible things. And she founded the AHA Foundation and does amazing work. She essentially came from nothing, educated herself, paved her own way, stood up against death threats and oppression, and has managed to do amazing things all around the world. She is an atheist. Now, according to the rules that Christianity set out, is based in Scripture, she dies. She is then tortured forever in hell. She burns alive forever. Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer, I forgot what his body count was. Was it 17? Horrible.
It was a lot.
He cannibalized them. While they were alive, he drilled holes in their skulls and poured acid in them, trying to make them zombies, and did all. I mean, unspeakable things. In prison, he accepted Jesus Christ as his personal Savior and was baptized shortly before he was killed in prison. Now, according to Scripture, he is now in heaven enjoying eternal bliss. Do you feel that's just?
But I don't know. Again, I don't know if he really did. I don't know if he really did. Christ.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say he truly meant it. He got to the end of his life and he realized he screwed up. He realized that he had been an abomination, and he thought, I'm going to make these he didn't know they were his last days, but I'm going to make the rest of my life count. I'm going to wipe the slate clean. Do you believe that it's just that he gets to enjoy eternal bliss while someone who spent their whole life escaping bondage and helping others to do the same is then tortured in heaven? Is that proportional and the act of a loving, just God? I mean, what's your perspective?
Well, anybody has the potential to go to heaven, and I don't know if someone is antisocial and they don't have a conscience. I don't know how true that his conversion was. I don't know, so I'm not going to answer. But I do think, sure, if someone committed murder and they truly repent and they are just ripped apart inside, and they're hurting, and they want to do, and it's kind of like the story when Jesus was being crucified on the cross, and you had the two criminals behind him, and the one rejected Jesus, and the one said, got saved right before he died, being crucified. Christianity is not about how good you are. It's not about just following rules and doing good things. Christianity is about realizing our depravity and our need for God and how much God loves us, and that and I think no matter what you do, if you truly repent and you are truly saved, sure, and I do think that's just, because we don't know what the other woman's motivation was. Was she doing that out of pride to make herself feel good? Was that pride for her to say, well, I'm a good person, I believe people are inherently bad, and no matter how good their actions are, that's not going to save them. And people who are deemed bad or do bad things, sure, if they truly repent, they can be saved. And I do think that's fair, because everybody has a choice, and everybody can do whatever they want in their life, and how you handle it.
I'll let you have one more on the way out the door here. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask very quickly?
Oh, there's probably tons. I just can't. I'm feeling a little bit. I know there's other people who need to speak, and I want to give them that opportunity. And
Erin, you are welcome. You're welcome to call the show anytime, or drop me another email if you want. We'll have another conversation. If you want, we can even have it off the air. Just you and me. It doesn't really matter.
I'd love that, because I want to learn more about atheism, and I really want to get a feel for who they are. And you do seem like a very easygoing guy who's concerned with the good in life, and
I'll prepare you. I will prepare you, and it's unfortunate, but there are many in the atheist community who will repel you.
I know.
If it's a product of they're upset because I went through an angry stage as well when I was an apostate. I was just angry. I felt like I'd been lied to and all that. But there are some who are defined by anger, and you'll find those people. You'll find people who often have the kind of the activist temperament. Are people who are very overt, very in your face. You'll find that the internet is a wonderful place, can be an amazing place. I love the Thinking Atheist community and so many others out there. But in some places, it's also sort of a haven for cowards. Anybody can sit behind a keyboard and be an armchair warrior and throw out an insult and then disappear. It's unfortunate. If you encounter those people, please do not judge all non-believers on those people.
It's my personal. Everybody has their opinion, and someone else's opinion about me is their opinion, and that doesn't define who I am by any means. And I can accept that, and I can not like what they said, but it's not going to make me dislike them as a person. I think people's actions are separate.
There are many people who think you and I couldn't be friends. How can you hang out with Erin? Gee, she believes in, what's the matter? And your people would probably say to you, he's an atheist. How can you spend 30 minutes on the phone with that? What can you possibly have in common? But I think you and I could easily be friends, and I certainly hope we are.
I consider, I would love to have you as a friend. You're a great person, and I respect your choice, and I respect your ability to choose how you want to believe. It's up to you, and it's up to me to believe what I want to believe. So.
Do me a favor,
I'd love to
Erin.
engage with you some more. Sure, what?
But before we talk next, and there are many sites out there that are better than mine, but if you haven't been there, over the course of and I'm not trying to convert you, but I want you to understand me. That's my motivation.
Okay.
Over the course of my apostasy, when I was going through the turn, I found the things in the Bible really started to bother me, and I put that information on my website so that others could go through it. If you get a second and you're bored and you're so inclined, go to thethinkingatheist.com, and there's a link there that says Refuting the Bible. And I don't expect you to buy it. Disagree with it. Well, fine. But just so you understand how I began to turn the corner in my life, go through the content that I listed there. It's pretty easy on the eyes. It's easy to digest. And take a look at it and honestly tell me what you think. And I don't expect you to buy it or agree with it, but I think it'll help you understand where I'm coming from before we talk again. Okay?
Well, I'll do that. And like I said, any conversations I have with anybody, I'm going to take the standpoint that it's going to increase my faith. And that's the way I am. I made my decision. So, but I love the challenge to my belief, because all that does is increase my faith. And I appreciate any other viewpoints. I'd love to learn about other religions, And I appreciate talking with you. I wish I could have verbalized things a little better than what I did, but
if my chat room is any indication, you did great. I mean, you and I spent, it looks like 40 minutes on the phone together, and nobody's going, get rid of the caller, because that's normally what happens. Move on, nothing to see here. I'm not seeing any of that. You and I just had a nice talk. It's been a real pleasure, Aaron, and we'll talk again, okay?
Okay, I appreciate that.
Take care.
You too.
I had a chance to interview Matt Dillahunty of the Atheist Experience. You know, he was going to be in seminary. He was going to be a preacher. Matt Dillahunty was going to be a preacher. Wow. And he was going to, his roommate was an atheist, and he was going to convince his atheist friend that there was a God. And so he thought, I better go do my homework. And he went in and he explored the Bible, and he interacted with non-believers to kind of find out, what's that about? How do I relate? And what happened was is he put two and two together, and he came to a point where he thought, wait a minute, they got a point. Now, I'm not saying that that'll happen with Aaron. We're not going to convince each other. She and I are just probably going to be able to kind of give the perspective of each side, and everybody else can play along, listen along, and see what they think. But it's amazing how there are many who've gone deep, deep, deep into Bible study who are more convinced, yes, and that strengthens their faith, yes. And there are many who go deep, deep, deep into Scripture, and at the end of the journey, they say, bye, I'm done. And you just never know when that's going to happen. Area code 781, thank you so much for your patience. What is your name?
John.
John, thank you for calling the show, and I appreciate you hanging on for, it looks like 50 minutes on the switchboard. You're very patient. What can I do for you?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah?
Well, I have a few questions, and I'm going to do the more important one to me. I've come across a question when talking or debating with theists, and that is, picture there is no religion, and you can't use religion to disprove God. How do you disprove God?
Is that an argument that you hear a lot? Because I hear it all the time.
Yeah, that is an argument I hear frequently.
Well, first of all, you can't disprove God is not an argument. Not really. And what I normally do is I turn it on its ear. Now, it does no good. It changes no mind. But someone says to me, well, you can't prove there is no God. You can't prove God didn't create the universe, is normally what I hear. And I always look at him and I smile and I say, you know what? I believe the universe was created by a giant plush monkey suction cupped to the back of one of Jupiter's moons. Now, you can't see him, but you can't disprove him either. Prove he's not there. And they look at me and go, that's just dumb. That's stupid. And I'm like, well, you can't disprove it. They're never convinced, but you can never argue the negative. You can't disprove God. We'll never totally be able to disprove the existence of any wild, deity floating out on the perimeters of the universe. Fine. I think you have to start at the other end of the argument and you say, look, let's add up the evidence and see if it adds up to God. The second thing I always say is that if he cares so much about my existence, why is the entire planet tearing itself to pieces trying to decide even what his name is, what he looks like, what his characteristics are like, what he wants? Hell, even the Protestant faiths can't even decide how to baptize the same way. For the God who's not the author of confusion, everybody's pretty screwed up, don't you think? That's what I do. I find an absurd argument and I counter it and say, disprove it, and then watch them kind of raise an eyebrow. What was the next question?
The other question is, how do you go about telling someone that you don't need God to be happy? And I know you explained that earlier, but every time this one particular girl in my school always comes up to me and is always saying that God still loves you, you can't disprove him. How can you be happy without him?
Well, I'm happier without him. I think it has to do with being comfortable in your own skin. When I'm trying to live by a set of guidelines that I can't put together, and it makes no sense to me, and yet I'm still thinking, well, no, I have to abide. Here's a great example. Whenever we were kids, They were saying, God's always watching you. God's always watching you. And you're always like, and so you feel, I found myself even as a young person looking up, oh, Lord, I'm sorry I'm sorry I did this. Oh, dear, please forgive me, God. Please forgive me, God. Please forgive me, God. It was a prison, Now that I'm finding answers that bring me satisfaction, I'm much happier. I'm much happier. I'm now that I don't believe in heaven. It's weird. I no longer worry about death. I just enjoy every moment. I know that different people are happier than others, but I don't think happiness, that religion, and the truth is, what's the quote that says a religious person may be happier than an atheist, but a drunk person may also be happier than a sober one. It doesn't mean you need to go out and get drunk, A happy fantasy is still a fantasy. I don't think happy is necessarily the measuring stick that they should be using.
All right, and if I may, one last question. The same girl, talking to her, she says, when I start quoting from the Bible, from say the Old Testament and etc., she says, oh, no, you can't look at the Old Testament. Jesus came to earth to say that was all wrong and that this is the new stuff that you should believe in.
Just have to read the book of Matthew.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I then respond with a quote from the book of John about how Jesus got angry that people were in a temple, made a whip, and started whipping people out of it. And ask, how is that so much nicer?
Well, a lot of people get into the Old Covenant, New Covenant trap. And of course, Jesus said, he's come to fulfill. Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets, right? I've not come to abolish, but to fulfill the law. He says that in the New Testament, which means he's validating all of the Old. The part about that argument that makes me nuts is the idea that if God endorsed genocide, infanticide, incest, slavery, rape, torture, and the horrible treatment of women at any point during his existence, any point, Old Testament, New Testament, wherever, whether it's a moot point today or not. If God was truly responsible for that, is he a God to be adored, followed, and worshipped? And my answer is always absolutely not. Well, it happened way back then, 3,000 years ago. You're saying rape's okay back then? Rape was all right? Stoning women for having premarital sex was okay? Really? Do you think that's stoning a guy to death for gathering sticks on the Sabbath? Do you think that was okay back then? Would you have endorsed it because it was an early culture? People are acrobatic when it comes to justifying the scriptures. Hey, if it was immoral back then, or today rather, I'm going to guess it was immoral back then. That's a dodge, and it's a common apologist trick. I wouldn't spend too much time on it. Thanks for the call, brother. Appreciate you very much.
All right, thank you very much for having me.
Mm-hmm. Another question. Why do you focus so much on Christianity? Where are your videos on Islam and other religions? And I hear that quite a bit. And I don't have a great answer for it other than Christianity is my personal background. It's my passion. I speak about Islam, usually on the Facebook page. We talk about Islam, and it's always a hot-button issue, right? Well, there are peace-loving Muslims, and there's the violent, extreme Muslims, and then everybody argues the merits of that. And some people say it's racist, which is stupid, because Islam, is not a race. It's a belief system. It is not a race. But I don't speak to it because, quite frankly, Christianity is my passion, because was so much a part of my life, and there's so many elements of it that I wish to speak about. And I live in a part of the world where Christianity is the prevalent religion. It is the one that I just tend to focus on. It's where my gifts lie. It's where I'm the most effective. There are so many others who are better, more qualified, more effective at speaking out and doing videos on other types of religions. We'll vary from that from time to time. We had some fun with Scientology. That was an easy target. We did the Mormons. We may do one on Jehovah's Witnesses. But the majority of my focus will probably always remain on Christianity. And as the community of the Thinking Atheist grows, I'm hoping to have some resources for people. And in fact, I've used in the past some people who are much more knowledgeable than myself, who have blogged and spoken about Islam. In fact, you can see some of that at thethinkingatheist.com. Why do you spend so much time speaking out against a God you don't believe in? What's the matter with you? Are you obsessed? Man, I hear this one quite a bit. If you don't believe in God, how can you spend so much time talking about him? What's that? Just seems kind of self-conscious to me. You know what I think? I think you really do believe in God. Okay. Once again, let me explain, okay? You stay the night in an American hotel room and you open up the drawer. Do you find a Dawkins book in there or do you find a Gideon Bible? When's the last time an atheist knocked on your door to tell you there was no good news? When's the last time somebody put up an atheist temple? When's the last time somebody tried to change the curriculum of your school to say that there was an invisible atheist God out there that you could not prove? You know, religion is everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. And it threatens us with eternal torment and damnation and hellfire if we don't buy into it. And it's not just going after us, it's going after our kids. What we do is a response. Religion has had carte blanche to be able to be as vocal and as prevalent as it wants to be, especially here in America. And those of us who raise a hand to protest and say, sorry, I disagree, I have legitimate gripe, I would like to air it, I would like you to examine the evidence with me. Somehow we're the ones who are obsessed. We're the ones who are the haters. We're the fly in the ointment. That's totally bogus. And it's a dodge. It's a way for them to be able to say that they get to be as free as they want with their speech. And if we say something like, well, the whole invisible man in the sky thing, and the enchanted tree, and the holy garden with the two naked people, and the talking snake, and the book with the floating zoo, and the Superman with long hair, and the flying chariots of fire, and the talking donkey, and the curses, and the demon-infested pigs, and the God of all the universe who cursed a fig tree because he didn't realize when figs were in season, and all those things, those are a problem for me. If we're the ones who say that, and we're the problem, there's an issue there, don't you think? But we have to say something. Otherwise, they go completely unchecked. One more real fast before I go to the phones. Do you have religious friends? I think I covered that. What software do you use for? A lot of people ask me how I produce the videos that I produce. My background is in radio. I segued into video. Look, let me say this. I can tell you what I use to produce the videos that you see at thethinkingatheist.com. I'm a big fan of the Adobe Production Suite. It is not a cheap software package, but it is. I think it runs $2,500, something like that, and it's a great tool. I personally like it. I think the interface is intuitive, and I like what it does for me. But I will say this. I've had a lot of people say, what software do I get? I want to make videos. And I always say it's not really about the software, whether you use Pro Tools or Sony Vegas or Avid or whatever. If someone tells me that they have great software to make videos, I always respond, great, I've got a word processor. Does it mean I can write a bestseller? You have to have the innate ability to tell a story. You have to have good instincts. You have to be able to know how to use the tools. That's why those guys, remember those guys? I think it was the same year that the movie The Haunting came out, the remake of The Haunting. Liam Neeson was in it. It was a Jan de Bont movie. I think it cost like $100 million, and the movie sucked. It was terrible. It's terrible. Awful. And there was money at the end. Their sets were huge. The special effects were huge. It was terrible. I think it was that same year, a couple of guys with a 16-millimeter camera and a video camera came out with a little movie called The Blair Witch Project. Remember that? Now, I didn't care much for Blair Witch, but it was a scary movie made for nothing. I think, what was the final cost of it? Like $15,000 is what they made the movie for, $15,000 on their spare time. A few days they shot it. Became, I think, the most profitable independent film ever made, I think. And it was about storytelling. It's about storytelling. You know what another great example is? Think about right now I'm working on a piece that is a tribute to Carl Sagan. I've been a huge fan of his poem. It's part of his book, The Pale Blue Dot. And I'm doing sort of an visual interpretation of that section. And I'm working on it right now. So I'm going through a lot of images. I'm going through a lot of graphics and a lot of things having to do with the cosmos and space and Earth and space travel. And you think about space travel, and it boggles the mind. You know, we've come to the point where man is essentially putting himself on top of this huge bomb, you know, this huge fuel filled rocket to the heavens, you know, traveling through space at 17,000 miles an hour, orbiting the Earth and doing manned spacewalks and visiting the moon and sending orbiters to other planets, and we're impacting asteroids in deep space and catching it on video, and it's just, I mean, it just boggles the mind. These are some of the greatest stories to be told. You know what one of the worst channels on cable television is? The NASA channel. You want to know why? Because they are crap at telling their own story. The Discovery Channel and the Science Channel, those guys do an amazing job of talking about space flight. But NASA stuff, it's like stereo instructions. It's not about the tools as much as it is your own ability to tell a story. And if you have an innate ability, or you think one's there that you can develop, then that's your starting point. In the software, that stuff comes after the fact, okay? It relates actually to one more question I had heard. You say that your videos cost money. And I do. I sell T-shirts and whatnot on the website. Why on YouTube would your videos have to cost money? Well, think about it. The vast majority of our type of videos on YouTube are somebody with a webcam and they rant for 10 minutes and then they hit off. And they might color treat it and they might fix the sound and then upload it, right? Took them a couple hours maximum and it's online. It cost them nothing. What I do is totally different. And it's one of the reasons that I was hoping that thinkingatheist.com would be set apart and kind of different. Because it is a produced experience usually. Even the interviews we do. I tried it to... I think we need to be wherever we can be in the excellence business. So the music must be licensed for use. I pay for every track in the hundreds of dollars. I mean, I actually pay well over $1,000 every year just for music. For the Carl Sagan piece that's going to release here in a couple of weeks, it is, I'm not going to fly into deep space, folks. So there's an opening shot that shows the Voyager spacecraft. Well, I had that contracted. I actually had the spacecraft modeled out and designed in 3D. And so that cost. And then I think, just for that one 15-second clip, we're looking at $150, something like that. Other images that can't be gotten from places like NASA that aren't royalty-free or free public domain stuff. I mean, you pay, folks. You pay. My narrators cost me between $150 and $300. There was one lady I almost used, but I talked myself out of it. For one read, I think it was a page and a half, $457. You pay for excellence. And so those sort of add up. And so the sales of the T-shirts and the mugs and whatnot help to alleviate the costs. And I'm grateful. And honestly, unlike the church, which says, give us 10% of your income and God will bless you, I'm very upfront about it. I'm like, buy a mug, you'll get a mug. And I make a little bit on the top. Buy a T-shirt, you get a T-shirt. You're happy, I'm happy. Wonderful. It helps both of us. Fine. And if you don't, sit back, enjoy the videos and the podcast and the website. Anyway, you don't have to do anything. Nobody pushes anybody. If they want it, great. If not, thanks for being a part of the community anyway. 404, thank you so much for your patience. You were on the Thinking Atheist podcast. What is your name?
My name is Raul.
Raul, what do you got for me? You have a question?
Yes, have you ever been asked if you just go around, belittling Christians?
Yes. Or why do you have to mock people? Why can't you just leave them alone? Do you hear that, or are you a Christian?
No, I'm an atheist.
Well,
when people always ask me that constantly, all I tell them is that I'm just trying to educate them and open their eyes.
I've heard it said, what's the saying that says, if you don't want your beliefs mocked, you should not have such ridiculous beliefs. And I agree with that to an extent. Here's the line that I make, is that I really try to go after the dogma, and I don't usually go after the people. I don't walk in and say, you're stupid, you religious person. That's ridiculous. Yeah, that's a horrible way to present yourself. What I do is I will put together a Bible story where it talks about Elisha on the roadside, and 40 kids come out and make fun of him for being bald, and the bears come out and maul them to death, and this is an absurd story and an absurd book, and I make fun of the doctrine. Now, they may borrow that offense and say, well, you're mocking me. But no, actually, I'm mocking the religion. I'm mocking the doctrine. And I think as long as we focus on the doctrine itself, there will people who always get offended. I don't think it's good to go out and point fingers as much at people. There are exceptions. Ken Ham, you're out there. You're an exception. Kent Holland, you're an exception. Everybody who works for Answers in Genesis, you're an exception. But, people will always feel attacked when you go after their core views. It's just a fact of life. I think you can mitigate it a little bit by going after the dogma instead of pointing fingers directly at the human being, okay?
All right, thanks, Seth.
Area code 678. Thank you so much for waiting. Who's this?
Hi, Christy.
Christy, what's going on?
Hey, I had a quick question for you. Just need your honest opinion because I'm trying to find somebody that can give me an answer on this. Have you met anybody who is an atheist who is in a marriage with a strong, fundamental conservative Christian and it actually works out okay?
Well, I've got one friend who she's not a strong fundamentalist Christian. He is an atheist, overt atheist, and she is really more of a I just think there's something out there kind of a person, and they sort of figured it out. We actually did a show on relationships between believers and non-believers, and we've had wildly conflicting stories. I've heard a lot of stories of divorce, people who couldn't take it, people who just couldn't get around it, especially when there were children involved. And there were other people who called or emailed and said, look, we've been complete opposites as far as our worldviews, and we learned to live around it, and we love each other very much and have spent umpteen years together. I think it depends on the people and their environment and how much they're willing to, to put up with. Do you know somebody who's going through this right now?
Yeah. Well, I'm an atheist, and my husband is a really strong Christian. And I talk to most people about it, and they say that it works fine if they're like the Christian is really, a so-so kind of Christian. But when it comes to fundamental Christians, I can't find a soul that's like that. That's still, and I have kids, so I can't find anybody else that's still in, like it still works. And I'm just trying to find, somebody that can say, yeah, this worked out, even though we have kids and one person's one extreme and the other person's the other extreme.
If we have a listener who is maybe in a marriage with a devout believer of some kind, put a message out on Facebook or something. Put a comment out, and I would be curious to see this as well. I myself, it's difficult. I mean, the believer is charged with, their life is bonded to someone who essentially has rejected their entire worldview, especially if there are kids. Then it becomes, well, how do we educate them? Do we tell them there's God? What kind of a school do they go to? Do we send them to church? What kind of church? Are you going to circumvent me whenever I'm not around to protect the kids? And, things get really sticky. I don't have a real tangible answer. I think every situation is so complex and different, it's a case-by-case thing. But let's check the Facebook page and see if anybody else has an experience they share, okay?
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Appreciate you very much. Thank you for listening to the show, and have a wonderful week. You sound like a radio announcer on your podcast. Is that a good thing? Because I hear that from time to time. Yeah, I was a broadcaster for a while. Sometimes it really has benefited me. Sometimes people hate it. Oh, God, I hate your voice. It sucks. Pleasing everyone, by the way, is absolutely impossible. Sometimes I miss, people have often asked me, do you miss radio? And I really do. I don't miss what radio has become. If you listen to the radio today, it is such a rubber stamp. They don't talk to you, right? They talk at you. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but it's here in America, right? Q102 FM, the greatest hits of the 80s, 90s, and today, home of the most music workday, less talk, and the fewest commercials, guaranteed all the hits, all your favorites, the best songs, the most variety. We only stop the music once an hour. Of course, they stop the music to tell you they are not going to stop the music. 15 in a row, commercial-free, without all the chatter. It's another most music, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, here on Q. I always hated the contest we had to do as well. We'd hit the brakes on a great music set, and it was always, don't forget to join us tomorrow morning, the Q102, Mark and Matt and Mindy, so-and-so morning show, your chance to win. Mark and Matt and Mindy going to play the secret song with a secret clue. 7:20 in the morning, all you have to do is wait for the same song to play sometime in the next 12 hours. When you hear it, be the 102nd caller. And tell us the name of that secret song with a secret clue. You'll have your name put into a drawing next month with 1,000 other people who named the secret song and the secret clue. And at a live broadcast, nobody's going to care about it. At a remote location, nobody really gives a shit about. We're going to draw names to where you might win a 0.0003 chance at a sticker, which might win you an envelope, which might get you a password, which might get you a key, so that you might win a 2012 Dodge Charger. Or a Chick-fil-A sandwich. One of the two. Of course, it always turned out to be the Chick-fil-A sandwich, and that's what radio has become. It's just on the radio station that never stops the music until we do. The new Q102. Well, you do that enough times, and you just want to stick a fork in your eye. And that's what radio has become these days. There's no personality. Everybody's replaceable. Everybody's just a number. I spent a few years at Clear Channel, and it was just crazy. And now, I'll spoil it for you. If you listen to the radio, you turn on the radio, there's a real good chance the DJ who's jockeying the show that you're listening to isn't even in the studio, possibly not even in your city. They're based in some home office somewhere, and they pipe this. Maybe they recorded the show the night before, and they're piping it in on the cheap. And the studio itself, it's all run by computers these days. It's all run by computer. Sometimes I miss radio. I miss the people. I miss Christian radio. When I was in Christian radio, I'll tell you, the audience, we were family. It sounds funny, but we were family. I mean, we would go out, people would come out and they'd hug us, and we'd hang out, and we'd laugh, and we'd talk, and we'd have concerts. And if there's any one thing I miss about my faith, it is being a part of the Christian community in that way. Even sometimes a couple of the songs I miss. People will ask, do you still listen to Christian music? And I can't. I just can't do it. But it's hard. Sometimes Third Day will come on the radio. There's a band called Third Day. I just love Mac Powell's voice. Just love it. There's a band called Seventh Day Slumber. They did a song we played, I want to say it's 2001, called Candy. Your Love is Like Candy. Every time it comes on, I listen to the whole thing. I listen to the whole thing. That sometimes I miss it. We'll do a whole show on Christian music one of these days. It's a fascinating culture, and I was there as it went from a hole in the wall, nothing on a shoestring industry to the single fastest growing music genre in the 1990s. It grew faster than any other format of radio. And there were some great stories. And you'd be amazed at some of the people who've come out of Christian music to do other things. And be amazed at some of the behind-the-scenes stuff as far as Christian music is concerned. Sometimes I miss it. This sort of scratches that itch for me a little bit. And it's a little better because you and I aren't governed by commercial breaks. I don't have to stop and say, and I'll be right back right after this. And then it's 5 minutes of, RV salesman or whatever. You and I get to spend time, and if we want to go long, we can go long. Or we can take 45 minutes to talk to Aaron about something without having to interrupt and validate the sponsors. Now, if the show ever takes off, will we ever be public someday? I don't know. Maybe. I kind of hope so. But one thing about this kind of show is that we just get to hang together. We get to just spend time together. We get to talk about whatever comes up. As we get ready to close the show, I know the holidays are a difficult time for a lot of people. A lot of people are angry because they feel like my family doesn't understand me. I don't even want to fool with them. Or maybe they're not welcome. You'd be amazed at the letters I get from people. And they come to the Thinking Atheist community to be reminded that they are not alone. And I want to remind you that, of course, you aren't alone. There are those people who are going to go see their families, and it's going to be a little weird. I kind of get that. I'm kind of preparing myself for that. But I don't think, I think there is a time for a last resort. There's a time to say enough. We did that video called Nothing More to Talk About. When the boundaries are not respected, there is a time you just have to say back off, period. It's not a question, not a suggestion. Stay away. Back off until you can abide. Until you can respect, until you can be an adult. But I want to encourage you, if you can, despite the differences that you have as far as the belief of your family, to try to maximize everything else that you have with them. You realize they are watching us to see, are we happy? Are we fulfilled? Are we crazy? Are we responsible? Are we respectful? Are we centered? Are we the kind of people that they would want to emulate? You know, if we walked in there and started freaking out and pointing fingers and cussing everybody out, of course they wouldn't. They wouldn't want to be anything like us. But if we walk in and with every word we provide evidence that, you know what, life without superstition is a happy life. And we can enjoy every moment without the concept of a divine happy place in the sky and pearly gates. We can love our children, and we can laugh together, and we can enjoy the day and great food and give thanks or whatever. The more I think we focus on ourselves and put ourselves in the vicinity of others who are watching, and they can see a centered, happy person, the more we, without saying a word, provide evidence to them that, you know, hey, these non-believers might just be more than the cliche we have constructed for them. They might just be more than all of the crazy things we accuse them of being. They might just be good, happy people. Regardless, I hope that the holidays pass without any negative incident for you. And I hope somehow you'll continue to make this show a part of it. Some great things happening here for late November and early December. We're going to be talking to veterans, atheists in the military. That's coming up here. And we're also going to be talking to ex-clergy in the coming weeks as well. Have a wonderful week, and thank you so much for listening. Take care.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. TheThinkingAtheist.com.